Great. So thanks for joining for today's demo. Scarbeck with us? No. Okay. So Scarbeck's got a thing on the item. Nothing to demo. Urgent CPU bound has been blocked. So we'll dig into that. But Jeff,
is that still true though?
That
because
this
morning I thought that I saw that we were unblocked by some work that was done our last night, where Stan found that us actually doing things right in Kubernetes exposed something that we were not doing right in Omnibus.
Yeah, that's what I understand as well.
Yeah, me
okay,
too.
so we're now unblocked, I think.
Cool.
I think so too.
Great. Jav, do you want to give us a demo?
Sure. So I wanted to show just how console is running right now in pre-prod, which is true as of about 30 minutes ago. We had some issues previously with TLS. I put some notes on the issue that's tracking this. Let me just share my screen. So the problem we have right now in staging and production is that we've lost the certificate authority key. And the certificate authority key was generated years ago by a former employee. So, and that former employee does not know where it is. So what we did is that we turned off TLS verification and staging and production, and that's the current state of things. So what I think we probably want to do is regenerate these keys, re-enable TLS, and this will allow us to get console running in the Kubernetes cluster. I think we could maybe even do it without doing those steps first, but it's probably something we should fix anyway. I put some instructions here because I just ran through this for pre-prod on how to generate the keys, generate the server keys, the client keys. I put in notes here about like you can choose for how long the expiration is. It's by default 1 year, which is not very long, so maybe we should increase that. We probably also want to come up with a domain, and also console has this concept of data center, which currently is set to like US East 1 for pre-prod and staging, and then something completely different for production. It seems like it's just a random string. I don't know if we want to change it. It might be a dangerous thing to change because if you change your data center, then clients won't be able to connect. So maybe we'll just leave the wonky string that we have for the data center. But in any case, once you have the keys and you update the GKMS configuration, and then we source the GKMS configuration in the k8s workloads pipeline. What you end up getting after you apply the k8s workloads pipeline is something like this. So we're using the HashiCorp console Helm chart. It's actually pretty simple, like because we're just using what they provide out of the box. Once you have it correctly configured, you can see that these are the pods for console. You might be thinking, wow, we have a lot of replicas here. Why is that? Well, the reason why is because it's a data set. If I do the wide option here, you can see that it just so happens we have a lot of nodes because we have a lot of node pools. So there's a console replica running in every single node pool.
Those are just agents, right? Do we have
those are just clients. Mm-hmm. The server is running in VMs.
How many of those do we have?
In pre-prod, we have a single server, which is something you would never do. But we don't care so much about pre-prod because really console isn't, we don't rely on console for anything in pre-prod at the moment because we don't have patroning in pre-prod. What we'll see, I can pull up the UI for console, and actually I think it'd be really nice to get the console UI like accessible from the outside.
Can you put it in read-only mode, Jov? Because it's the only thing about it is it's kind of scary with like full access.
Yeah, you can write the access policy and set the default as read only.
On the UI. Okay, because
because by default everyone can write. Yeah, by default everyone can write, but if you set a policy, then you need the key for writing.
That's cool, because yeah, when I SSH tunnel to it, I'm always like, this is scary that you can just sort of see this stuff. But yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah, I was thinking we would just put it behind IAP, but that's a good point, Andrew. I don't think we want everyone in the GitLab.com domain to have access to console, so we have to figure that out. You could have like a group of SREs for it, or read only. Yeah, but anyway, so here's what you look at, or this is what you see when you connect to console. We're actually like a minor version behind console, so we may want to consider upgrading at some point, but I don't know if we want to do that now. These are the services that are running. I don't know why we have these services defined, honestly. Like, I guess we have maybe a service that is looking at the liveness check for Unicorn. These are VMs, by the way. This isn't for Kubernetes. Where you can see Kubernetes is if I go to nodes. Now you see like all of these GKE nodes here that are reporting in the console server. So just to be clear, my web browser is connected to the console server cluster, which is running on VMs, not to, it's not running on Kubernetes. And that's probably the way it's going to be initially because, we're going to be using the existing console cluster we have. There's one failing check here. If we click on this, this is Lesio's point. We don't have any followers. So it's just like one leader and that's it. Pretty lonely console cluster. Yeah, that's.
Do we use the key value storage for something?
No, we don't. We don't really use console for anything right now except for console DNS and the Patroni, the Patroni service, which isn't running in preprod. What's this beat exporter thing? I don't know. I've never seen it before. I guess it's for PubSub, and there's an exporter, like a service that's automatically configured. We definitely don't use it for anything, but it's kind of cool to have all of these like services listed here. This is for the node exporter, I assume. Pretty cool. Yeah.
Just right at the beginning, apologies if it's a stupid question, but you mentioned that there's one per node pool.
Yes.
Is that, why is that?
Because all containers need to have access to console agent. So
and the containers might have firewall between
yeah, exactly. So you have access. So every container has access to the console agent and is local on the node.
So you mean one per node, not one per node pool?
Yeah, that's different.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. If I said that, I misspoke. It's one per node, and we have a lot of these.
I thought I heard node pool.
Yeah, actually. I did. Yeah, you said that. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Sorry, I misspoke then. Yeah, I meant one per node.
That makes a lot. So it's a daemon set then. That's just running.
It's a daemon set. Yeah, yeah. So, sorry.
That makes a lot more sense.
I'll show this again. So yeah, so here are the replicas, and you can see, we have for every node pool we have, the reason why there's so many is because we have all of these node pools which consist of a lot of nodes. I would say we're a bit over provisioned because of that.
Yeah, I think I was talking sort of some other place to Skarbek about this. And I don't know how you feel about this, but I kind of feel like in the longer term, we'll probably reduce that number, right? Or do you think that in the longer term, not now, but.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think what I really like about the node pool isolation is for I/O on disk. This is like something that we were concerned about with Sidekick, like, saturating IOPS. And by having separate node pools, this gives you a bit more isolation for that.
Yeah, I mean, for some things, but yeah, for like web and API and those things, would they need Git? Like they will kind of not, they're just kind of service workers.
I don't know. Like maybe I can't really say, like I would think like maybe like internal API and public API. Maybe you'd want those to be isolated into separate node pools, but maybe not. I don't know. I think one thing I'd like to discuss is moving registry into its own node pool so it isn't on the default node pool, because it's a memory hog, and I think it would be nice to isolate. But yeah, I mean, you can't really pack things efficiently if you're creating a node pool for every single service. So,
but it's okay. I mean, it's okay for us to do this now. Honestly, I think we have too many unknowns for us to now also introduce everything in one place. So this is something that we should tighten later on.
yeah.
Totally agree. Like it's a safer way to start doing it, but then yeah, like maybe, you know, once we like really good with
Let's
this stuff,
get to Kubernetes first, and then
exactly,
you know,
yeah,
along the way tackle performance issues. And we saw in the recent incident that the container registry is a little quite under the pressure in its current node pool.
Well, you know, the first time we actually have an incident where we don't automatically point towards the Kubernetes cluster as the point of failure, then we can start talking about us feeling comfortable about running this. We know a bit better, but it was way too easy for people to just point to the cluster while things were actually clearly broken somewhere else. That means we have we are not in a comfort zone, right? Like we are not there to be able to claim, you know.
and that's just going to take time. It's, you know, and also like I think there's a ton of stuff that needs to be done on the observability side to really help us understand that stuff better. Looks very pretty, Jav.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of cool. Like I said, we should probably expose this to the outside a bit easier, but maybe only for SREs. Yeah, so the next step is probably going to either be to pair up with reliability to get the console TLS configuration working, or to drive that ourselves. And then to get this on staging. Yeah.
We are not going to drive this ourselves. People who were driving it originally should continue driving it because they have the expertise. And we just need to ensure that we expose this in a proper way so they can schedule it, prioritize it, and so on, and explain how it affects us.
Yeah, the issue for it is scheduled for this month, but no one is assigned yet. So maybe we can talk to Dave to see, or I can talk to him to see what the status is.
To raise maybe a priority a tiny bit so we can assign it earlier. Yeah, let's do that. That's a good approach.
I have some question about console.
Amy discussed this with Dave. Might be worthwhile.
Yeah.
I have a couple of questions about console and the grand vision of using it for GitLab.com, because so we are, as I understood, we are using this only in production, only as a service discovery for Patroni. So this is the only reason why we have console installed, which kind of cover less than 10% of console features.
We use it for finding the secondaries from Rails, the secondary databases.
Yeah, it's service discovery.
Basically, and it's just on the database secondaries.
Okay, and we are just relying on the DNS interface, I suppose. We are not implementing the console agent APIs in Rails.
Correct, yeah.
But I think that's you know, using the service records is a good way to go with that, because
yeah, sure, it's a separation, right? So you can just replace it with something else and it will work. No, my question was more about if we had plans for making use of the key value store, not for the application, but for the infrastructure. Say, think like, I want to store status. Maybe there is an ongoing production deployment. Console, when it's replicated and is a distributed system, is a good place for storing this kind of information, which is transient, but it kind of defines what's the status, and it's external to the GitLab, the product, because it's something that we need to operate the infrastructure. So this Yes, basically was my question, if we are already using this for something, or it's just
as far as I know,
discovery. So
we don't use it for that. But like the one thing about that is obviously we've also got etcd in a certain part of the application, and could we kind of like use the Kubernetes abstraction for that? And I think the examples you gave kind of show that that's not a great example. Well, maybe it doesn't work because obviously deployments wouldn't work like that. But
yeah, but the idea is more about, we have console which is outside of Kubernetes, so it's a tool that we may use regardless of we are in VMs or in Kubernetes world. Because one of the best practice that I know about the etcd is that if you need it for your application purpose, it's better not use the one provided with Kubernetes, but you should have your own cluster, because it's something, because the etcd in Kubernetes is for Kubernetes, right? So you should not mess with that one. So that was just thinking out loud, because we have console.
No, I think
we're not doing. Go ahead, Andrew. We're just keep in mind that we're not doing a console agent per pod. We're doing a console agent per node. Like for things like storing key value, I mean, it would be at the whole like environment level. It wouldn't be like. Yeah, but I mean, we could run console agent as a sidecar. We could run it as a sidecar or something, but we decided that we don't need to do that.
But I think what Alessia is saying is like, okay, we're doing a deploy now, like put it in as a global value, deploy of release X, and it is global. You know, it's not local to anything.
I see.
And that might be better than a file, you know, lock somewhere or.
But because you already have a distributed system for handling this, so it is local to everyone because you have the console agents running at least at node level. So the round trip is shorter, and you already have what it is. Well, you have a multi-master system, so it's just already distributed and things like this.
Yeah, it might be interesting to use it for deployment state, like just to kind of keep track of what's happening with that relates to deploy. Maybe, I don't know. Cool.
Cool. Thanks for that. Skarbek, we had a brief chat before you joined. The migration of the urgent CPU bound, that's not blocked anymore, is it?
Theoretically not. I'm still catching up on that day, but it looks like that issue was fixed by Stan, so let's just do some validation on that.
Cool.
So hopefully next week, because I'm not going to do this on a Friday, hopefully next week I could start doing the migration of that queue.
Awesome.
Like, can I just go back 1 second to Alessia's point?
Sure.
So one of the other really interesting things, right, is if we did use console for like global state, we could also use the console exporter to take a subset of the keys and put them into Prometheus. And that would be very useful for things like not alerting on low operation rate errors when we drain Canary, because that state could be kept in Canary, you know, kept in console. And then we could automatically include that in our alerting. So when drain Canary is on, or even, you know, we could have higher error rates while a deploy is going out or anything like that. So that's actually a really interesting idea. Sorry to jump back to it.
That's fine. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, I see that it's got a thing called KV filter, which is a way of choosing certain key value pairs that'll put into Prometheus for you. So yeah.
Nice. Does someone take an action to actually get an issue started to capture that stuff? Maybe not Alessio, since it's about to go on holiday in about an hour.
I can write it up.
Yeah, do you want to set it out? We can get the things. Awesome, thanks. Cool, so discussion things, I want to just make sure we go through the next steps. So maybe, Jav, do you want to go through where we're at with this cache NFS mounts? Because that's maybe your next step.
Okay, yeah, so that's easy. It doesn't seem like it's a blocker anymore, or it shouldn't be a blocker now. I've already unmounted the cache mount across the entire production fleet. We were looking at 90th percentiles of downloads. It didn't seem to be affected at all from what I can see. I mean, of course, it's a very spiky metric, but it looks good. No additional load on the Gitly servers. So I think we could just chalk this up as a win, and that you don't have to worry about it for GitLab.com. That issue isn't closed yet because, you know, like there's some discussion about what should we do for self-managed cloud native. And I was proposing that we by default turn this feature flag on so that nobody uses the disk cache. Jakob wasn't too happy about that and responded that like, we probably don't want to mess up people, which I agree, but this would only be for new installations. We could just turn it off for cloud native so that no one uses the disk cache for cloud native. But I think that's gonna like, we'll probably have to bring in some more people to discuss that. But as far as GitLab.com, this is no longer a blocker.
That's a separate issue, Jarv. So this one can be closed because you resolved the original ask in this issue. So branch it off into a new one and send it off to people who actually own this part to decide how they're going to handle the default in self-managed.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can close. I mean, we're not technically, the solution to using a non-disk cache was to just not use any cache. If that's enough to close it, then
okay.
I'll just close it, I guess. I mean, I don't know.
I see what you mean. So you named this issue use a non-disk cache, but then basically what we ended up saying is we ain't using cache at all.
Well, we're using Cloudflare okay. Completely outside of everything, right? So yeah, so I don't know. I think like I would prefer if, you know, I would prefer to have a solution where the default just works for cloud native, and currently, in my opinion, it doesn't work for cloud native, or it's not great because you have these files on disk that are going to build up over time.
This should be an issue in Helm charts and have distribution make the decision.
Okay, I'll do that then. I'll just, yeah, I'll spawn
I know
up
it's not the ideal solution, but it's actually like we found the solution for GitLab.com, and we need experts in self-managed as well to handle the default.
Okay. Cool. On the same topic of blockers, I saw that there's now an epic for the live traces. I put it in the top. With a bunch of issues. What is not clear to me is like, and maybe Amy or Maren, you know, like what is the horizon? Have you heard any updates for this?
The horizon is right now the work is happening. So
okay, so ASAP, like
ASAP. No, like Grzegorz is assigned to it, and he's working on delivering as much as possible that will unblock us.
Okay.
So horizon this and next month is the initial work, and then whatever comes out of that as well.
Cool. So I think once that's done, the last remaining thing is pages. And
I'm working on pages right now. Yeah. Working on pages right now. I can tell you the horizon here. For us to be unblocked for the web and API, it'll take a couple of months. It's not going to be instant, obviously, because there is a lot of work that needs to be done. But the work that is happening right now, the investigative work, is being wrapped up. And there are a couple of proposals out there how to tackle the problem. And I can't say any details right now about what's going to happen next, but I can tell you that next week there is going to be some movement on who and how this is going to be driven further, and that will give us a more clear horizon on when are we going to be unblocked on the web and API. This is not to say that Pages is going to instantly become cloud native. That's not the goal of this. The goal for us right now is see what we can do to unblock us And then whenever pages arrives as part of the cloud native deployment, that is a longer story. It's not going to happen in a month.
Sounds good. For next steps, I think after it sounds like we're going to finish the urgent CPU bound. I guess we need to decide what comes next. Like, do we try to take more queues off of catch-all and move them, or do we move on? Like, as soon as the console work is done, we can start. All the other blockers are finished, so we could start working on Git HTTPS and Git SSH or the WebSockets work. I think those are our options.
Yeah, do you have any preference, Garbek, what you pick up next?
I don't have a preference. I think all of these are excellent candidates, and I would love to see all of them moved.
Can we get to the point where Sidekick is done? The definition of done we can change. It doesn't have to be everything in Kubernetes because it can't be. Can we get to the point where the only queues that are left isolated are the ones that we cannot touch because of the blocker issues?
Sounds
and then
good.
Call the Sidekick epic done, have a separate epic that is blocked on the application development, which will allow us to move on the Git HTTP.
I like that.
Do we?
So we'll spin up.
Sorry, go ahead, Scarbeck.
I was going to say we'll spin up like a pseudo catch-all node pool in Kubernetes, and we'll slowly figure out which ones don't depend on NFS, and we could isolate those queues onto that new node pool probably.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe we use the tag, like, because I think having a bunch of names is going to be a bit overwhelming to manage. So maybe we just use the tag syntax we have in the queue selector and just start tagging things.
Precisely.
But I think what we need to do is we probably need to create a VM. We need to move them to VMs first so that we can monitor NFS. Like, we need to have a staging area, like a staging area where we move them from the catch-all to the staging area on VMs. We look at the NFS metrics, make sure there aren't any NFS reads or writes, and then once we confirm that, then we move them to Kubernetes. I think that'll be the sequence that we'll have to do.
I also don't know how many queues are being processed by the catch-all fleet right now, so I don't even know how much stuff we have to investigate right now.
That's your step one then. Perfect.
Yep.
Yeah.
Jarv, is it possible then, because what I'm hearing right now is that if we are going down that route where we are going to be isolating in VMs and doing all of that, basically sifting through muds type of work. Sorry, Scarbeck, I know it doesn't sound excited. Is it possible for us to parallelize some of this work and say, you take on Git HTTP and planning for that and starting the work for that, while Scarbeck is doing the Sidekick? Or do you want to work together on this and pair so that we are done quicker?
Yeah, I think we can start working on the Git or the WebSocket. I think first we need to decide what we want to start with. Maybe, yeah, I'm not sure whether I would choose Git HTTPS or WebSockets. But yeah, we can do that. And yeah.
Does WebSocket have support in charts? Did they merge that already?
I haven't looked at that specifically, but I do know, like, I was also thinking existing WebSocket traffic, we could also move over. If we just want to move over all WebSocket traffic.
Sure.
That's an option. But
okay,
yeah.
maybe that's a better thing, because it also, I mean, Git HTTP traffic is not giving us any headaches. I'm not saying WebSocket is, but it also unlocks a new feature on GitLab.com that everyone is just dying to wrap up.
Also,
Yeah,
to kind of tie it back with the previous comment that we had about feeling comfortable with Kubernetes. Like if the Git fleet goes down for like an extended period, the pressure on us will be a lot more to kind of fix that, right? Like that's one of the most. So I mean, I'm not assuming that that's going to happen, but it's just about catching everything else up to that.
It would be really nice to, like, this is the first time we're going to have an ingress for a Kubernetes service other than registry. It would be nice to be able to have Canary. But it's like, we can't really do Canary for WebSocket. We can't really do, I mean, we can do Canary for HTTPS Git, but yeah, I don't know. Something to consider.
Sorry, but I don't understand the proposal. If you're saying it would be nice to have it, but we cannot do it for any of these, what's the proposal?
No, I think, like, I see Andrew's point that maybe starting with HTTPS Git or Git in general is bad because it has like a huge blast radius and it'd be terrible if it didn't work. At the same time, with WebSockets, we can't do a Canary. For HTTPS Git, yeah, we could do a Canary like by just request paths.
Why can't we do Canary?
For WebSockets?
Yeah.
Is that like, well, we can't use a cookie for that, right?
You can, well, you can use a cookie, you can use another custom, I mean, Git has Canary WebSockets, right? So if there's a reason, you know, it's at the start, it's just a normal HTTP request. So you can stick anything in that.
Sure, yeah, we just don't have that capability now. That's all I'm saying. Maybe we can. So okay, so let's research into it. Let's make sure like the first thing we do is a Canary.
Yeah.
Like,
but if the front end developers are saying it can't be done, I don't think that's. I think it can be.
Okay. I'll
Can we just
some,
overrule this decision and run percentage of traffic through Canary, regardless of the, why not?
That's of course another option, right? We can just use weights and take like a very small percentage. I just feel better about Canary because, you know, it's more internal usage than external usage.
No, my point is that when Canary was 1 week ahead of production, this made sense. But now we're talking about hours. So shifting percentage of production traffic to Canary is something that we should do regardless of the cookie, because it helps us understand the status of something that we want to deploy in 1 hour.
Yeah.
And Alessio, I think we should do that, but you have to have, like the lesson we've been learning over the last few weeks is if we do that with the web, then the WebSockets have to be sticky with the same version. And when you talk to GraphQL, it also has to go back to Canary, right? And so we don't have the tooling to do that at the moment. And so it's basically scattergun, and that's leading to lots of problems at the moment where, you know, people add a new thing in GraphQL and they'll go back to the server and it won't be in the request because, you know, the server's not Canary, for example.
But because we are using path and not sticking to user sessions or things like that, because if we were saying something like 10% of users, so sticking on sessions goes to Canary, regardless of the path they are asking, this will allow us to make sure that if you get a Canary front end, then you also GraphQL queries, for instance, will be routed to Canary because it's your connection, it's your session, right?
Yeah, as long as there's stickiness, then I'm fine with it.
Yeah,
but if there's
we don't have stickiness.
The sticky thing is really not working well.
Well, Andrew, you don't like stickiness, right? So
no, but it's complicated. If it's as long as everything's going to the same stage, that's what I want, right? And you know, obviously, like stickiness to a stage is fine. Like if you put a cookie in, but then obviously if you drain Canary, then everyone goes to the main stage. But like the main thing for me is that we can't have like, oh, something's happened. We can't have half going to one place and half to another.
Yeah. Alessio, I think the point of Canary in this context though was infrastructure, and in this case, like we want to like deploy the new infrastructure in the Canary stage, and it would sit there for like a week or two, right? So I think that's the main benefit that we'll see about having something we can put in Canary first, is just to ensure that it's working with production traffic for a long period of time before we promote it to production.
So we've got just a couple of minutes left. So what's the action? What's your plan, Jav?
I will I will like start an issue to discuss what the next thing will be, and we'll figure it out in the issue.
Cool. Okay, great. And Skarbek, can you handle that sidekick epic and getting that so that we can get a kind of complete epic and have a separate one for the other bits that are blocked? Great. Cool. Was there anything else anyone wanted to cover today? No? Okay, awesome. Thanks very much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your days.
Have a good weekend.